Takeoff from London, 82 lives on board, and then sudden darkness, no instruments, no radio, no autopilot. The captain fights to keep control of a powerless Airbus in the black night sky. What unfolded next became one of the most unnerving electrical failures ever recorded on a British Airways flight. This is the story of Flight 870. It was a cold October evening in 2005. 76 passengers and 6 crew members boarded a British Airways Airbus A319 at London Heathrow Airport. The flight, BA870 to Budapest, Hungary. The passengers were a mix of tourists bound for the historic European city and Hungarians returning home. Estimated flight time, 2.5 hours. At the controls, a 53-year-old captain with almost 12,000 flying hours. He had flown Boeing 757s, 767s and spent over 4,000 hours on Airbus aircraft. Beside him, a 29-year-old first officer, relatively new with about 2,000 hours, all on the A320 family. Neither knew that just minutes after takeoff, they would face an emergency no simulator had ever prepared them for. Just after 8 p.m, Flight 870 pushed back from the gate. Fuel on board, 13 metric tons. Destination weather, poor. Budapest was covered in fog with low clouds and rain predicted, but for now, focus was on departure. The captain advanced the thrust levers and the A319 thundered down the runway. Moments later, it was airborne, climbing into the dark skies above London. Once stable, the autopilot was engaged, standard practice in London's crowded skies. The flight's path east over Clacton across the North Sea, then over Europe. Estimated arrival 10:30 p.m. local time. 8 minutes after takeoff, disaster. A loud clunk echoed through the cockpit, and everything went dark. The captain's displays went black. The autopilot disengaged. The radios died. For a terrifying moment, Flight 870 had no visible instruments. No altitude, no speed, no attitude indicator. The only thing keeping them alive was the faint horizon line outside the cockpit window. The first officer thought both engines had failed, but the aircraft was still climbing. This was not an engine failure. It was a catastrophic electrical power loss. On the ground, air traffic controllers lost contact. Flight 870 vanished from radar and fell silent on the radios. Somewhere above Clacton, an Airbus was flying blind. The captain took manual control, but Airbus pilots rely heavily on instruments. Now, with everything dark, only faint standby dials remained, and even they weren't illuminated. The radios were dead, controllers couldn't reach them, even the headsets lost power, forcing the crew to shout to one another. The first officer pulled out the electronic checklist, one of the few systems still working. Step by step, she called out the procedures. But in near pitch darkness, even finding the right switches was agonizingly difficult. After more than a minute of tense flying, she reached the critical step. Switch to alternate electrical supply. She pressed the button, and then light. The cockpit screens returned. The autopilot could be re-engaged, but trust in the aircraft was shattered. What had caused the blackout? Could it strike again? The crew declared a pan, an urgent situation short of Mayday. Controllers cleared them into a holding pattern over Essex. The captain considered his options. Maintenance control advised it was safe to continue to Budapest, but something didn't add up. Key systems were still offline. Windscreen heating, cabin temperature control, galley ventilation, and worst of all, the number 1 generator had failed. The crew weighed their options: continue across the North Sea and Europe with a crippled jet, or turn back to London and face disruption, cost, and angry passengers. For 40 minutes they circled, debating safety versus pressure. Finally, the captain made his choice. Against instinct, against risk, he trusted maintenance. Flight 870 would continue to Budapest. For hours the Airbus cruised normally, manual thrust only, but stable. The passengers relaxed, unaware of how close disaster had come. But as the aircraft descended toward Budapest, a final problem emerged. The captain's windscreen froze solid. At -50 degrees Celsius outside, moisture iced over the glass. He was blind. only the first officer had a clear view. She would have to land the aircraft herself. Approaching through thick fog, manually handling thrust levers she rarely touched, the young co-pilot guided the Airbus to the runway. At 10:50 p.m., Flight 870 touched down safely. The passengers cheered, the crew exhaled, but the danger had been real. The incident was investigated. It turned out that the real cause wasn't the transformer rectifier as the crew thought. It was Generator 1, a core electrical system. The frightening part? Engineers couldn't replicate the exact failure, and similar incidents had already happened on Airbus A319 family aircraft. The solution wasn't to prevent the failure, but to minimize its impact. Airbus redesigned its systems. Backup lighting for standby instruments. A dedicated LCD backup screen with its own power supply. Automatic switching to alternate electrical sources in case of generator failure. Small changes born from near disaster meant lives could be saved in the future. British Airways Flight 870 ended safely, but it exposed a terrifying vulnerability, a reminder of how even the most advanced aircraft can be brought to the brink by a single failure. What do you think? Should the crew have turned back to London, or were they right to press on to Budapest? Share your thoughts in the comments. And for more incredible stories of aviation survival and mystery, subscribe to Aircraft.